Today, I'm going to be showing you how to make this beautiful crazy lace agate pendant with the uniloam detail. I'm Patti. I'm a jewelry designer here at Fire Mountain Gems and Beads Jewelry Studio, and I'm really excited to get to do this with you. I love crazy lace agate. Let's look at that a little bit closer. Isn't that beautiful? It's got so much detail and so much interest, and every piece is absolutely unique. And the uniloam is really fun. It's a popular symbol right now that a lot of people enjoy, and I hope you like the piece.
Get our email newsletter for beading news, sale announcements, new product announcements, and more. Link is in the description below.
So there's just a couple of materials in this pendant. All we have are some 20 gauge wire. We're using para-wire in this case and copper. And I chose this copper wire for the contrast to the blue stone. And I chose it in 20 gauge as it fits the hole and is thick enough to hammer nicely. I chose round wire as it can be hammered flat. You can use square or twisted wire if you want to skip the hammering. You can clean it by mixing a 50-50 salt and vinegar paste, or use Penny Bright and a soft cloth. And these great crazy lace agate pieces, we'll use this one today. And then finishing it off with a copper chain. Okay, really simple to make. It doesn't take a lot of tools or skill set. So let's go ahead and get started on this pendant. So we're going to start with the wire. I'm going to pull off about 11 inches of this 20 gauge copper wire. And we'll bring in a ruler to make that a little easier. Bring it down to the 11 there. Okay, so pulling the wire off, I'm just going to measure it there and give it a little snip. There we go. Okay, then I'm going to kind of check out the wire. It's pretty straight coming off that roll. Para-wire tends to be really good that way. But just to make sure it's perfectly straight, I'm going to run a wire straightener over it. And this tool works by holding the wire between your thumb and forefingers and closing those sections around and just pulling nice and tight. Okay, we've got a really nice piece of wire all ready to go. So this is really easy. The little triangular piece here has a hole. It's top drilled here. And so we're just going to put the wire through the hole. Like so. There we go. And I want enough to bend up, because I'm going to show you the back here. It bends up and then it wraps around a couple of times. So just enough to be able to do that. And you want a little extra tail to work with. So leave about 1.5 inches out over here. And we're just going to push that up against the triangle so it's kind of going in line with the triangle. And the other side the same way. This is such an easy one to do. And you just get them so they're crossing over neatly. Then I like to take my chain nose plier and right in that bend, I'm going to pop that longer wire up. And I'm going to pop the shorter tail out to the side a little bit because I want to wrap the shorter tail around the longer tail. So if you have the wire in this configuration, it makes it easy to do that. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clamp the short tail that I'm going to be wrapping in my chain nose pliers, just like that, so it's nice and tight. I'll change hands here. I want my non-dominant hand clamping that down. And then I'm going to take another pliers. I'll use rounds, but you can use whatever is comfortable for you. Get a good grip on that wire. And then you're going to make just a couple of nice tight wraps. Doesn't need to be too many. They're really not going to show. And we'll cut that tail off. And make sure it doesn't fly up into your eyes when you cut it. hold on to it or put your finger over it. Almost. I want to be real careful in cutting that I don't cut the wrong tail. And there you have that. I'm just going to take my chain nose and make sure that tail is snugged in so nothing is pokey there. Okay, very nice. The next thing I'm going to do is take my chain nose pliers and we're going to make this loop at the top that makes the bail of that pendant. And I'm going to use my chain nose pliers to kind of measure out some room to leave for wraps. And so I'll clamp it here and then push the wire forward. So we make a nice little 90-degree bend there. Then I'll take my round nose pliers and put them right in the lead there. And I want a fairly large loop, so I'll go all the way to the bottom. And I'm just going to wrap that nice and tightly all the way around. And so we have a really nice loop there right at the top. Then I'm going to flip that around and take my chain nose pliers. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and clamp that loop nice and tight. I don't want to clamp the tail, just the loop. And then once I'm comfortable with my clamp, I'll start wrapping, and I'm going to wrap down, and I don't want to mangle this wire too much because we're going to use that to make the uniloam. So we're going to go down until we've kind of taken up all the space like that. And so there we have our bail and our wraps done. And I'm using a wrap loop here because it's secure and makes the piece more durable. The next thing to do is to make the uniloam detail. Isn't this simple? I just love this project. So the next thing we'll do is go ahead and make these 4 little loops. So I am going to grab my round nose plier and put it in there and make 1 loop. There we go. There's 1 loop. And then I'll put it on the other side, and I want to make an equal loop on the other side. And it just takes a little bit of finesse, getting them equal. Take your time on that. Okay. And we'll do it again to make another loop. And you can kind of pop this up so it's not hitting the stone. It makes it a little bit easier. And I'm going to bring that in. That's a little bit too big of a loop. There we are. And just keep adjusting until it gets to where you want it. And on the other side, I'll make another loop. Sorry. Just about there. And I'm going to take my pliers out and just look at them and make sure that it's doing what I want. And I'm feeling really good about those loops. Then I'm going to make my uniloam detail, and this is just a little bit wonky, so I'm going to grab my nylon jaw pliers and just straighten that out. Want it really nice and straight before we try and make a curve. Okay, so now that we have the wire nice and straight, I'm going to kind of measure it out in my head how long I need the wire to be to make my uniloam shaped detail like you see here. So we're just making this spiral part of it. So I feel like this is just slightly longer than I probably want it. So I'm going to cut off about, ½ an inch. There we go. It's all up to you how large you want to make that. Then I'm going to take my round nose plier and I'm going to start a spiral here from the bottom. So I will grab the wire kind of right in the middle of the barrel and make a little hook, and then I'm going to cut just a millimeter or so off of the hook, and that gives you a really nice round shape. It gets rid of that little flat spot. Then I'm going to just kind of loosely bring it around. So you can see we're starting to form the spiral there. And it just takes a little bit of time and patience. And you can use other tools to kind of adjust here. I feel like this loop is a little large, so I'm going to use my chain nose to kind of push that in a little bit. Just super gently. And then I'll use my round nose to kind of round that out. There we go. That's really looking good. And then I think at this point, I'm going to use my nylon jaw and just clamp that spiral and kind of gently finish that curve off, just like that. And I've got a little bend there, so I'm going to straighten that out gently, gently. Now, the last thing that I do to finish this off is grab my steel block. And I've got this rubber base that I put it on to keep it from making a lot of noise and vibration. And I'm just going to pop that whole thing up. Let's grab the nylon jaws to do that. Pop that whole thing up so it's kind of sideways to the piece like that. And kind of get it all in one plane. Just kind of adjust it so it's real straight as we can get it. And then once it's on the block, look at it and make sure it looks like you want it to look. You can also make some little adjustments here. I think I'll make a little adjustment there. Because once you hammer it, that's the shape that it's going to stay. So I feel pretty good about that. So I'm going to go ahead and start hammering, and I'm going to start with the spiral. And I'm just going to put everything off but the spiral off of the block, and that keeps me from accidentally hammering over a joint. And the hammering is finished. It doesn't take very much, especially with this nice soft copper. Then I'm just going to take my nylon jaws and work that around just a little bit so everything's in the position that I want it to be. Just like that. And then I might take my chain nose and come in here right at the top where the wire bends away from the loop here and from those wraps, and just bend that down nice and tight against that gorgeous crazy lace agate. Isn't that a beautiful piece and so easy to do? I know that you can do this. And then just finish it off with a chain. Isn't that lovely? I'm so glad that you were here with me today for this project. If you make something like this, we would love to see it. Make sure and tag us in your post. Make sure and like, share, and subscribe, and join us here again at the Fire Mountain Gems and Beads Jewelry Making Studio. We'll see you next time.